This call is being recorded.
Hello, everyone. Today we are here. This is the Cooking Without Looking TV show podcast, and I'm with Kevin Burton of burtonmedia.org. How are you today, Kevin?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well as well. Thank you. You wrote a blog about us today, and I thought it was really very nice, very generous of you. I really appreciate it.
Well, it was intriguing when I came across the little ad for the show, and so the last couple of months I've seen the Zoomcast, and I have to tell you it's one of my best read articles already in its first day online there. So I should be thanking you.
Oh, no. Well, that's great. Well, hey, Kevin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am what when I was young they used to call a high partial, which means someone with a lot of usable vision but who is still legally blind. My dad, when I was graduating high school, he said something to me. I went to the Ohio State School for the Blind in Columbus, and we were talking about this and that, and he said to me that you feel responsible for all those blind kids, all those kids, don't you? Well, he didn't have it exactly right, because that's not exactly it, but he had the idea that I really had in the Christian circles, we call it a burden, just a real interest in the well-being of blind people at all levels, all over the place. So most of what I've done in my life has involved that, just helping blind people maximize their journey however I can. So it's been kind of a strange life. I moved around a lot because my dad was in the Air Force, so that was the beginning of it. And then I moved around a lot in journalism. I have a degree in print journalism from McPherson College here in Kansas. So I moved around a lot doing that. So I've been around to a lot of places and have always, though, landed back in the Midwest one way or another. I might go away for a while, but I always end up back in either Kansas, where I am now, or in Ohio. That's where I spend most of my time. So words are a big part of my life and always have been. As a blind person, trying to find a job is almost universally difficult for people who are legally blind. So my first full-time job that was a good job in journalism, I had in Alaska. Why? Because I had a hard time getting into the business. A lot of people liked my writing, but they did not think that a blind person could be a full-time print journalist. So after I got a fistful of rejections, I said, there's a magazine called Editor and Publisher, and it has all the open jobs in the back. And I would read that every week. And finally I figured out, I bet nobody else wants to go to Alaska, so I'll compete for those jobs. And so I'll be competing against fewer people, and that worked. I applied to two places. One was the Nome, Alaska Nugget. That's the name of the newspaper. And the other was the Frontiersman newspaper, which is in Wasilla, Alaska. So Nome, I don't know if you know your Alaska geography. Nome is that town way, way, way out there on the Aleutians, close to Russia, way out there.
Oh, that's where, what was her name again? She was able to see Russia out of her back door.
Well, yeah, it's way out there, and it's very, very cold. Fortunately, though, for me, it was the Frontiersman, the other one that I applied to that actually hired me. That is in Wasilla. It's an hour north of Anchorage, and it's cold there, but it's not really any colder generally than, say, in Minnesota or North Dakota would be. So pretty comparable. So that was my life stream to work full time in news, and I was able to do that. And I moved around a little bit. After that, I worked in the only daily paper I ever worked for was in Iowa, Muscatine, Iowa, which is a Mississippi River town. And I was there during the '93 flood, so that was a big story I covered. I also worked in Washington State, Kansas, and Ohio, of course. So moved around quite a lot doing the news, and it's a tremendous experience. I remember, I'll just pull random things out as I think of them here. One time I was in Washington State, and there was somebody in the area raising guide dog puppies, and so she brought in her literature from the school and showed it to me. She said, "Okay, this is something called Braille. Now you can't read that," but I said, "Oh yes, I can." I'm probably the only newsman or one of the few in captivity that can that could read Braille. But so that was interesting, and it was I won my share of awards in Alaska. I won a statewide sports columnist of the year against the big dailies, the Anchorage papers. That was pretty huge back then. So
wow, that's great.
So I have always had an interest in words and communication, and these days that is taking the form of the blog that you mentioned. I've had that for about 20 months now, and it is supposed to be, it is patterned on the old style newspaper column. So wherever you went in a major city, you would probably have a newspaper that had at least one, maybe two or three columnists, and they would write 2 or 3 times a week on just various topics. So that's what my blog is called, the Page 7 blog, and that's what it is based on, an old-style newspaper column, so that it covers a lot of different things. It is, the way it's worked out, it's a lot of issues related to blindness, of course, just because I'm the one doing it. A lot of sports, a lot of faith, stories about my Christian faith, and a lot of things about music, and then some other things sprinkled in there in between. So that's keeping me busy and keeping me learning things too. So that's quite a bit of it.
Well, let me get back to your partial. What was the phrase again? High partial?
Well, we'd always call it a high partial. And
what do you see? What do you see as a high partial?
Well, if you ask my wife, she'll say, "I see what I want to see." So, and that is accurate, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So I can see, I can see things across the room, but to read a sign across the room, say, I would have to use a monocular, a handheld monocular. I'll give you one example in the news business. This was in Washington State. They would I was covering an election, and they would put up the vote totals on a chalkboard. So you can tell this was a long time ago. It was very low tech. But I would read the instead of charging across the room and getting right up on that chalkboard, I would read with monocular from across the room who was leading, and schedule my interviews or seek out my interviews accordingly. So that's kind of the way I do it. The monocular is for distance, if I'm traveling, street signs, that sort of thing. I use magnifiers, 5x magnifiers for close-up reading, and that's basically the way I do it. in the land of the blind, I guess I'm pretty well blessed because I can see the sunset. I can see the faces of my loved ones, and appreciate a good painting or what have you. So blindness is, it's a difficulty, but I at least have the partial vision that helps me to appreciate life and navigate life.
That's a good way of putting it. And speaking of that, I know you are a beep ball aficionado. Tell our friends out there about your beep ball.
Well, beep baseball is baseball for the blind, and I think probably a lot of people listening in know that or know about it. I played for, I think it was 23 years, something in the low 20s, and I coached for 8 of those years, and that taught me a lot as well, because these beep baseball teams are little nonprofit agencies, and so especially in Wichita, the one I ran, it teaches you how to do a lot of accounting and publicity and everything. So, but the competition is it's pretty keen. If you stumbled across a game, you'd see it was pretty serious business. And I remember in beep baseball traveling to Taiwan. Taiwan has had one or more teams in our league for a while. And one year, the big end of the season World Series was held in Taiwan. And so that was, the team I was on was very mediocre, if I can use those two words together. It was, so we at the beginning of the whole venture, we said, well, should we spend all this money and go to China to prove that we can't play? So, but once we got there, we actually did win 4 games and lose 4 games when we were there. But
hey, well, 50-50.
To be on somebody else's soil and to hear your national anthem played is just a tremendous experience. I'll never forget that. And not everybody gets to do that. And I've won my share of national awards in beep ball as well. They pick all-star teams, and I was on 5 of those, 1 for hitting and 4 for fielding. So, but the people, the teammates that you know over the years, it really is, they call it a big family reunion. And the competition, as I mentioned, is keen, but you're dealing with baseball and the sport and the competition, but you're also, after the game, and you're talking about, life as a blind person. You're talking about jobs and
Yes.
accessibility and really everything. And so it is a big family reunion each year, and that was wiped out last year because of the pandemic, as a lot of things were.
Right.
And people are doubly interested to get that going again, get that back started up this year.
Well, do they test your eyesight to be sure everyone has a low enough vision before you're on the team?
Yeah. Yes, you have to. And the players all wear, except for the sighted players, are the pitcher, the catcher, and 2 defensive helpers called spotters. So we feel that's a great idea to have the pitcher be sighted. So that's the first thing, And but all the players are blindfolded because someone like me would have an advantage with some vision over someone with no vision at all. So they are very serious about that. And when I was coaching my team when we first started, because people cheat, I've been cheated by people, and so when I got a team, I said, listen, the fastest way for you to get cut and get off of this team is to cheat. Those of you with partial visions. We don't do that here. We're not doing that here. So, but yeah, the vision is evened out, so to speak, with these blindfolds.
Well, that's a good idea. And there's no peeking or anything like that. Have you ever had any injuries with a pitcher going throwing the wrong way or anything like that?
Well, most of the injuries that happen in beep ball happen running bases. There's the base that you run to is a cone, and it is it's about 3 feet tall, and it's soft, but you can't always control the way you fall over it. So that can be awkward if you actually flip over it. If you time it just right, you run to it and reach your hand out and hit it. I try to hit it with the middle of my chest, so that it
Ow.
is.
Ow!
I'm not. It's soft. It's soft. And I'll tell you what, runs don't hurt. Getting put out, that hurts. Runs never hurt. Never.
That's true. I can believe you on that one, definitely. Well, tell us. I know I had to sort of talk you into this because you said that you weren't like anything like a Julia Child or any famous chef. You just felt like you were able to cook. And so tell us about your cooking experience.
Well, funny thing, when I first was dating the woman Jeanette, who's now my wife, on Monday, the job I had at the time let out at 4, and so I had an hour to prepare her a meal on Monday night. That was our ritual, and I really consider myself a C plus level cook. I'm not trying to be a great
like
cook.
Like all of us, right?
Well, yeah, I think so. But I'm really, I want to at least stay at that level. So, we began to have these meals on Monday early evening, and she really liked what I was making. And it's like, that was my first clue it was a match made in heaven, because I just considered that this was such mediocre fare that, she didn't seem to be faking it. She seemed to really like the thing. But,
and she had eaten the day before, right?
Well, yes. It wasn't like they starved some of these dogs in the dog food commercials, I think they used to make them so hungry.
So hungry.
But anyway, I have the best dish that I have is called That Chicken, and it has a variant called That Other Chicken. So it's very, very basic. It is a chicken and rice casserole with good old Campbell's cream of mushroom soup and mushrooms.
You can't go wrong with that.
Nope. Mushrooms, broccoli, and celery. So that's the basics of it. And that other chicken also has jalapenos. I'm a big fan of the hot and spicy food. So if I'm making it for myself, it's definitely has the jalapenos in it. And if not, it would have the without. But I have made this with cream of celery soup, and I don't like it nearly as well. Now, if I were a real chef, I could tell you why there's such a difference between cream of celery and cream of mushroom, but it just does. Cream of celery soup almost tastes bitter to me. But if you have a mushroom allergy, which is why I made that in the first place, there were some people that had allergies, so that's why I did that. So you can substitute different things. And it is takes. I used let's see, 1.5 cups of white minute rice. I never tried it with brown rice. It could be done, I guess. The cream of mushroom soup, Campbell's. One 6.5-ounce can of sliced mushroom. You get about 2 ounces of celery chopped, and about 2 ounces of broccoli chopped up. And you mix that together. I brown the chicken, 2 or 3 ounces of chicken chopped up. I tend to brown that very lightly in a skillet before I put it in with everything else. I probably wouldn't have to do that if I were a more experienced cook. I maybe wouldn't, but that's the way I do it. And so I cook it for 50 minutes on 350 degrees because I just don't like it's possible someone with more experience could cook it on 400 and take the time of it down, but I'm just comfortable with slow and steady. 350, and it takes about 50 minutes depending on your oven, and that's the way we go.
Wow. Actually, that sounds great. And 350, basically, that's like the most basic. Most people put their oven on 350, no matter how much experience they have cooking or not. And that's sort of the usual 350. Now, do you have any special things you use when you cook?
Not really.
Any...
Well, I had to ask my wife for where the food scale was. I never used it. I had no idea where it was.
I'll let you in on a secret. I have never used a food scale. My father
Really?
used a scale for he was diabetic, so he would weigh his food. But no, I've never ever used a food scale.
Well, I did for the purpose of talking here about exactly how much of this and that you put in. But no, most of my things are just really basic. Knives and did I mention the size of the pan I used? 8 by 10. I'm not sure if I mentioned that.
But now you did.
I use the big oven mitts as opposed to the pot holders,
right?
So that it's just an extra comfort that my whole upper arm protected, and not just
nothing worse than those upper arm burns.
no possibility of me dropping anything like that. So, but it's pretty standard cutlery, and I do joke about my cooking because it's not great, but I like to think I'm somewhere in the C range.
Well, I'm sure it's better than C. Your wife to be, before she was your wife, loved the food, so I'm sure you just that Midwestern humble you're wearing today.
Well, it looks good on a lot of people. A lot of people should pick it up.
Yeah, right. More people should try that on.
Yep.
Well, if you have I'll turn your question that you gave to me on to you. If you had any recommendations or thoughts for people who are blind, or young people who are blind who have to cook, what would you tell them?
Oh, I would just say to do it your own way, because there's people will teach you one way, and that might work, but you want to be comfortable, and because you are working with heat, and if you not, you want to use a system that works for you, and so it probably take a while, some trial and error to get to that point, but just be confident and know that you will eventually come up with a system or a set of techniques that works for you. If you're talking about labeling dials and this and that, if you're talking about even modifying equipment or what have you, as long as it works for you, because you're going to make this food and you're going to produce it for yourself and your family. So you want to get into some kind of groove and sweet spot, and just have confidence.
Well, that sounds good.
If I can do it, just about anybody can do it.
Well, tell us where we can see your blog. Tell everyone.
Well,
where
I'm on WordPress, as Cooking Without Looking is also on WordPress, and you can find the blog. Again, it's called the Page 7 blog, and I should explain that a little bit. I called it Page 7 because my number for most of the years I played beat baseball was 7. Also because if I called it Page 1, it would sound like I was making myself into a big deal. So my things can be found on Page 7, and this is at www.burtonmedia.org. It's a .org, and Burton is B-U-R-T-O-N. www.burtonmedia.org. And if you're looking today, you will see the Cooking Without Looking blog. And if you're looking tomorrow, you'll see another one on cooking. And if you're looking Saturday, you'll see something about Super Bowl snacks.
What you want to give us a heads up on what one of your snacks is for the Super Bowl?
No. Tune in Saturday.
Okay. All right. We're just going to bury that lead until Saturday.
There you go.
Well, thank you again, Kevin. We've been speaking with Kevin Burton of burtonmedia.org. This has been Renee Rentmeester, the Cooking Without Looking TV show podcast. Have a great day. Bye-bye.